The survivors I met were extremely brave. They're breaking the taboo and stigma of sexual violence as we shared our experiences. One of them described how difficult for her to share her story because she's 61 years old, and it's, even more difficult when you're older. But she said that she knows that, there are 50 other women that she left behind and they need our help, and that is why she's fighting and telling her story, because she wants the world to act and rescue them. Another survivor, she was a mother, and she also described how difficult for her to share her story while she has 4 of her children who were with her and saw what happened to her. But she feels this is only way of getting over the trauma and what happened to her. She wants to share with the world, just as I did, almost 9 years ago when ISIS attacked us. I think it's so difficult to talk about rape and sexual violence. There is just so much shame and stigma, but they are so determined to share their stories, to make sure that the world see what happened to them as a war crime and not just as a side effect of this war.
Nadia, people listening might be just asking themselves, where does she get the courage to sit and hear these stories, having had the same happen to her? So where do you get this courage from?
When you go through something like this, you just don't want to see it happening to other women and girls ever again. And I could not just sit in a refugee camp and forget about what happened to me and other survivors. I could not wait and when just let the sexual violence remain invisible. I didn't want the sexual violence to be a taboo subject for survivors, because we need accountability, we need justice, we want to hold them accountable, and this is what survivors actually were asking for here in Ukraine. For so long, it has never given the attention that it deserves, and especially in conflict zones, it was only considered as a side effect of conflict, that if you could hear, listen to survivors, they don't want that anymore. Rape and sexual assault are one of the oldest and yet least talked about crimes committed in conflict zones. It's also a way to destroy communities from within. The communities and the survivors, they suffer from PTSD, unplanned and unsafe pregnancy, diseases, stigma, and threat of if they ever report or escape from the abuse, that they continue to receive threats. This brutal tactic remains widespread across the world, and it is something that we need to focus on it and raise more awareness, and I think the first step is through education.
So what can be done to end this, and most importantly support the victims of these heinous acts? Because your co-Nobel Peace Prize winner laureate Dr. Denis Mukwege from the Democratic Republic of Congo, he's a leading gynecologist and rights activist in the country. He said once that sexual violence in a war is a form of torture and a way to terrorize a population. So how do we help, or what kind of help do we give to those, as societies, what kind of help do we give to those survivors of these acts?
One of the first things is accountability. It's not difficult to bring perpetrators to justice, especially when you have all the evidence. But what is difficult is to find the political will to hold them accountable. Reparations are really important for survivors to be able to move forward and rebuild their lives. And this is what Dr. Mukwege and I have been doing through the Global Survivors Fund. Reparations could mean different things to different survivors. It could be psychological support, shelter, or cash, or any support, because their experiences are different, and when we talk to them, their needs are also different. The other important thing is to keep the Murad Code in mind, when journalists, investigators, interviewers, practitioners, anyone who is trying to work with survivors to make sure that they do not re-traumatize them,